I'm one of the RDs at Community Servings, and we are here for episode 26 of Learning Kitchen Live. So if you haven't joined us yet this month, we are doing something special. We're partnering with our friends at Always Healthcare, and they are offering a little sweet prize for people who cook some of our recipes. So if you are interested in winning an Instant Pot, which we're giving away, all you need to do to enter to win is cook any one of the recipes that we made in January. So that can be from any of Belle's, Jess's, or my episodes. Make the recipe, take a picture of it, and post it to the comments of our Facebook page, and we will draw a winner at random after next week's episode. So it doesn't have to be today's episode, it can be any of the ones from the past few weeks. But if you don't know what an Instant Pot is, it is a pressure cooker, and it also has a lot of other functions. It can be a slow cooker, it can steam, it can even be like just a hot pot too. So pretty useful. It's a great time saver. So if you're interested in getting one, go ahead and make one of the recipes and drop it in the comments that you made it and send us a photo. But let me move on to today. We are on episode 26 of Learning Kitchen Live, and I'm going to be talking about how to spot hidden sugar. So we talk a lot about avoiding sugar or ways to reduce sugar, and I think we sort of double down on the fact that sugar is definitely something that we don't really need extra of. So it doesn't have any nutritional value, it's just empty calories. But what I really want to focus on today is kind of spotting sugar where you wouldn't think sugar might be. So, if you're eating a cookie or you're having a candy bar, you certainly know you're eating sugar and that's a treat. And that's perfectly fine because your body kind of knows, your brain knows that that's sugar and that's your treat. But sometimes some of the foods that we consider healthy are actually loaded with sugar. And so what I want to talk about today is kind of ways to notice that on the label and highlight some foods that tend to be higher in sugar. And I'm going to make two recipes where, in general, they would be kind of higher in sugar, even though we would consider them a healthy food. And I'm going to sort of increase the sugar in it. So I'm going to be starting with some baked beans. So baked beans are usually something that we might have at a barbecue or as a quick easy side dish, and they are healthy. They have lots of fiber, they have good protein, healthy fats. The problem is most commercial brands of baked beans have like 15 grams of sugar, and you kind of know that when you're eating them. They taste so good and sweet. So what we're going to do today is kind of bump up the flavor using some seasonings, and instead of using ketchup, using some tomato sauce, chipotle peppers, smoked paprika. We're going to use a little bit of maple syrup for some sweetness, but really we're going to get all the flavor from other things. So this has two parts to the recipe, so it's going to go on the stove first to combine everything, and then I'm going to bake it in the oven for a little while. So I'm just going to get my pan going. And if you're just joining us, I'm Beth, and I'm one of the RDs here at Community Servings, and this is Learning Kitchen Live, episode 26. I'm just getting my pan heated. So the original recipe for this calls for cooking down some bacon first to give it even more smoky flavor and a little bit more salt as well. And if bacon is on your menu at home, go ahead and do that. We don't serve pork here at Community Servings, and in addition to that, I really wanted to keep this a vegetarian dish. So instead of cooking down the bacon and using the bacon fat to cook my onions, I'm just going to use some canola oil. So my pan is getting hot, and I'm just going to put about a tablespoon of canola oil in my pan. And then I've chopped up an onion. It doesn't have to be too small, but you want, bite-sized pieces. This is a red onion, but you can use any onions you like. And so I'm just going to get that going in my pan. Hear that nice sizzle. And we just want to cook them in soft and a little translucent. Get that going. So then the other ingredients I have in this recipe are going to be some chipotle peppers, which are smoked jalapenos, and they're almost always stored in what's called adobo sauce. this nice smoky tomatoey sauce. They're a little bit spicy, so if you don't want spice, you know, add maybe just half a chipotle pepper. If you really like spice, add 2 whole chipotle peppers, so it's really customizable for you. And then we're gonna add something called miso, which is soybean paste, and this is gonna add some really good, like, sort of umami flavor, a little bit more saltiness. They make a lower sodium version of miso, so if you can find that, that would be great, because then you can really control how much salt is going in there. So we're going to use a tablespoon of that, and it's just going to give it sort of this like unctuous umami flavor to it. So my onions are going. And if you don't have the miso, that's completely fine. Just leave it out, or maybe even add something else that has that umami flavor, like a touch of soy sauce, or you know, just something that has like a little bit of earthy feel to it. You could even use some tahini, that would work well too. But miso is usually found like in the Asian aisle of most grocery stores. It's pretty ubiquitous these days, so it's not too hard to find. And this container will last in your refrigerator for like ever. So, you know, if you feel like you don't want to buy this because you're only going to use a tablespoon of it, there's tons of ways to use miso, and it's going to last forever, so it won't go bad. All right, so our onions are getting nice and sweated out. And to that, we're going to add the miso. So, we're going to add, this miso is a little bit hard. It's been in the fridge for a while. We're going to add a tablespoon of the miso. And then we're also going to add a clove of garlic that I've already minced. You just want to kind of sweat that down. I always say this in every episode, but you just want to be careful when you're cooking garlic because it burns really easily and it tastes pretty bitter when you burn it. So just keep an eye on that. That's why I usually add it right before I'm going to start adding some things to cool down the pan, like the liquid ingredients and stuff. So this will just go for a minute. You just want to make sure the miso is kind of covering all of the other ingredients. And I can tilt my pan so you can see. You can see it's just kind of coating all the onions and kind of getting a little brownness on it. But again, I don't want to burn my onions. So to this, I'm going to add 3 cans of Great Northern beans, or you can also use navy beans, so just kind of like small white beans. And I have rinsed them and drained them. If you can get no salt added, that's great. Otherwise, just make sure you rinse them nice and well. That will get rid of a good amount of the added sodium. Whoops, dropping beans. I'm just going to lower this a little. Beans in there, and then to this we're just going to add a couple more ingredients. So we're going to add a half a cup of either no salt added or low sodium chicken or vegetable broth, whatever you have on hand. We're going to add a can of no salt added tomato sauce, and this is just 1 8-ounce can. So this would usually be something we would use ketchup in, but ketchup has also quite a bit of sugar, and that's kind of one of the foods I want to talk about looking out for. You know, 1 tablespoon of ketchup or so is usually fine. That's, you know, has about 4 grams of sugar maybe. The problem is usually we don't eat 1 tablespoon of ketchup. We usually eat like 2 or 3, and we're eating it with French fries, so that sort of becomes a meal that we might not want to consider so healthy, and people don't always consider the ketchup like a food that counts towards the meal, but it does. So for this, I'm just going to use 1 chipotle. Just pull it out there, and they're pretty saucy, and you can get some of the sauce in there too. It's got some really nice smoky flavor. Sorry, can you see that? Ooh. Okay. So I'm just run my knife through it. Just scoop it up in there. And then finally, we're going to add some apple cider vinegar and a little bit of smoked paprika, about 1.5 teaspoons of smoked paprika. And finally, something for a little bit of sweetness, because they're not really baked beans if they don't have a little bit of sweetness. But we're just going to add 1.5 teaspoons of maple syrup. So that's it. And so if I was using like a Dutch oven or a pot that I want to put in my oven, I could just transfer this straight into a 350-degree oven. But I'm actually going to transfer this into what we call a hotel pan here at, you know, in a commercial kitchen. So it just looks like a square pan. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to get my hotel pan. And this is going to bake for about 45 minutes in your oven, but as you know from previous episodes, our turbo ovens usually do it a little quicker. And you just want to cook them until they're nice and flavorful and like kind of crunchy on top a little bit. So that's that. I'm just going to get it right in the oven, and then we'll move on to our next recipe. So the other recipe that we're going to make today is something that is usually pretty healthy and is going to be pretty healthy, but the problem is usually these dressings are just loaded with sugar, and salad dressings in general can be pretty loaded with sugar. So usually when we think about salad dressings, we're thinking about, you know, the fat and the calories and things like that, but also it's important to look out for the sugar, because you may not realize that a dressing that might be really low in fat, in order to make up for the flavor, they're adding a bunch of sugar to that. So it's definitely something to look out for too, especially if you tend to put a lot of dressing on your salads. So we're going to be making this Thai salad with some roasted chicken in it, and it's going to have a peanut dressing. And so usually peanut dressings are pretty loaded with sugar. So I've dialed this back down a little bit. So we'll make the dressing first. So what I've got is some natural peanut butter. So you don't want to use peanut butter that has sugar in it, because that will kind of defeat the purpose. So we'll get 1/2 cup of peanut butter. And this is pretty customizable as well. You know, if you want it to be spicier or saltier, that's fine too. And that's what I like about making your own salad dressings in general, is not only can you cut the sugar or cut the fat that you might not want, you can really cut anything you want or add anything you want as well. So, you know, sometimes it seems like a little bit of a more daunting task to make your own dressing, but it's really worth it, especially if you can make one that lasts for a little while and really makes a salad worth it. All right, so we've got 1/2 cup of peanut butter, and then to that we are going to add some low sodium soy sauce or coconut aminos. So I have coconut aminos today, which are similar to soy sauce, but they tend to be far less full of sodium. So I'm going to do, if I can open it, 2 tablespoons of this. So if you're using soy sauce, try to go for the low sodium, but the coconut aminos work well too. And then we're going to add some sesame oil. So about 1/3 cup of sesame oil. This is actually 1/4 cup, so I'm going to do just a dash extra. So, you know, for things like this, like, because we're not baking or anything, it doesn't have to be completely scientific. You just want to start to get it working in so that you don't send dressing all over the place. You can also do this in a food processor, which will make it all really easy, come together really easily. So getting that going. And And then we're going to add some rice vinegar. So we've got a 1/4 cup of rice vinegar. You want to make sure you get the unseasoned rice vinegar, because if you get seasoned rice vinegar, you're just going to be adding sugar that you didn't mean to add. Just like a cup of that. Alright, so here's where it comes even more customizable. So this recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm actually going to dial down back to 1. You really don't need it all. You can also use honey too. But we're just going to do 1 tablespoon of regular granulated sugar. And then we've got some chili, garlic chili paste, which is pretty much available everywhere. It's in the Asian aisle as well. So this is where you can decide how hot you want it. This recipe called for 2 tablespoons, which I think will actually blow all of our heads off here. So I'm just going to add maybe like 1.5 teaspoons. You know, whatever works for you. Also, they kind of vary. Some brands are a little spicier than others, so we'll start with 2 teaspoons. And we're also going to be putting some jalapenos in the salad, so it's going to be spicy in that way too. So then I've got a couple of cloves of garlic that I chopped up. You just want to get a nice fine dice on the garlic. Again, using a food processor here would be great, because then you could just throw it all in and it would get really nice and well mixed. And finally, our last ingredient is going to be some fresh ginger. So I will bring that over here so you can see what I'm doing. So you can use, you know, granulated or dried ginger in this, of course. But I think that the fresh ginger really makes a huge difference, especially when we're cutting out sugar. It's so nice to have, you know, that really nice flavor. So I'm actually, I peeled the ginger, and now I'm just going to take the small holes on a box grater and just grate it through. You can, of course, do this with a knife too, but it's so nice to do it on a box grater. The ginger tends to get a little woody, so I think sometimes it doesn't chop and get as small as we want it. So, a teaspoon or so of the ginger. And then we're just going to thin it out a tiny bit with some water. It says to use 1/2 cup of water. This doesn't look like it needs a full 1/2 cup, so I'm just going to put a couple of splashes. So there you go. Now this peanut dressing would taste good on pretty much anything. It can work on chicken, it can work on, if you make those like fresh rolls, you can put it on noodles and make like a nice peanut noodle sauce. So it's pretty versatile, but we're going to put it on this awesome salad. So what I like about this salad is it kind of is a good antidote for like the January blues of, you know, trying to eat a little healthier. Not that that's required, but you know, a lot of people at this time of year are trying to avoid all the foods that they ate over the holidays, or really just kind of focusing on some healthy eating. So I like this salad because I don't feel like I'm giving anything up when I eat this salad. So we're going to start with some green cabbage, and I've already chopped up some because I had a huge head of cabbage, but you can get like a small head of cabbage, or sometimes in the grocery store they like slice them in half and put them in cellophane. And of course the easiest way to do this is to buy the pre-shredded cabbage, and I am definitely a proponent of doing that because it makes the whole thing come together so easily. But I just chopped up, I have about 4 cups of chopped cabbage, and you can do it on a mandolin or just with your knife, however you want it. And so to that I'm going to add just a few more ingredients. So I just realized I put the salt in that dressing. Alright, well, we never put the sugar in, but there it is. Now we have extra salt too. It's gonna taste real good. Okay, so we're gonna grate a carrot. So I have my box grater. I'm gonna use the bigger holes this time. And you probably, if you have smaller carrots, you'll need about 2, but this is kind of a bigger one. And you can do this in your food processor. You can just do it with a vegetable peeler if you don't have a grater like this. You just want like nice shaving other foods that tend to be loaded with sugar? Well, Jessica talked about this in her last episode, is tomato sauce. So whoever thinks of tomato sauce being a high sugar food, but most commercial brands of tomato sauce have like around 7 grams of sugar, and that's for a half a cup of sauce. So, you know, that really does kind of add up. If you eat that a lot, or if you eat more, if you eat a whole cup of tomato sauce with your pasta, you're now adding about 14 or 15 grams of sugar. And it's kind of hard to find brands that don't add sugar. So that's why she talked about making tomato sauce on her own. So that's another one to look out for. Another one would be packaged breads. So sometimes, breads have quite a bit of sodium and sugar in them. So check labels to see what you're buying when you buy something that might look healthy. It might be whole grain and high in fiber, but it might also have quite a bit of sugar added to it. All right, so that'll do that. Got all these beautiful carrots, and then we're going to add some chopped scallions. So I have about 4 of them here. You just want about a cup or so of chopped scallions. You just rinse off this knife. And you can use the whole thing. You want the green and the white parts as well. Can't tell me that doesn't beat the January blues by looking at all those beautiful colors. And then we have the world's most polarizing food, cilantro. So if you hate cilantro, just leave it out. But it definitely adds like a certain, sort of Thai flavor to it. So if you do like it, I would add it. But I know there's lots of people out there who don't like this food. So we'll add about cup of it. Just run your knife through it. Okay. And then the last thing is a protein source. So I'm going to be using some shredded chicken. I cooked some chicken earlier today so that it would be cooled down for me to use. I just have 2 chicken breasts here. But you can use a rotisserie chicken. You can use, deli chicken, or roasted chicken. And of course you can do it with other proteins. So this would be awesome with some grilled shrimp or some roasted tofu. I think there's a recipe from earlier in the season of our Learning Kitchen Lives where Valerie made some tofu. So that would be a great use for that. I think she even did it with the peanut sauce too. So I'm just going to run my knife through it. It says to shred the chicken, but I'm just going to kind of like chop it up, so nice little chopped salad. But if you were doing it from a rotisserie chicken, it would be really easy to shred. And all I did was just season these chicken breasts with some salt and pepper. So some other foods that are good to just kind of be careful about are things like yogurts. Yogurt is definitely a healthy food, but a lot of times some of the yogurts are loaded with sugar. And I notice this particularly with some of the like non-dairy forms of yogurt, so like coconut yogurt and almond yogurt. They do put quite a bit of sugar in some of those brands, but especially the kids' yogurts too. Like I know it's hard to get kids to eat yogurt unless it's super sweet. But a lot of those like drinkable yogurts and things like that a kid might eat like 3 or 4 of in a day have like about 20 grams of sugar. So, even though there is some good nutrition to them, they're adding quite a bit of sugar to that. So it's worth taking a look and just being careful. All right, so I'm adding my chicken. And then I'm just going to add my dressing. And so what's great about this salad is that it will keep in the refrigerator for several days because I don't have to worry about the cabbage getting soggy like it would if I was using like a lettuce or something like that. And you can also add some like hearty greens to this as well too if you like that. Like this makes a great kale salad if you don't want to do strictly cabbage, but the crunchiness of the cabbage is awesome. And there's some things you can add for toppings on this. One of them is of course chopped peanuts, but also another popular add-in for this is actually some diced papaya or mango, which you can just chop up real small. I know that sounds kind of funny, and it will add a little bit of, you know, sugar in terms of our natural sugars, but it tastes really good. So, you know, you can add sesame seeds, anything you like. So this salad will last several days in a fridge, so it makes a great, you know, quick go-to lunch for anyone that is either working from home or coming to work. So that's that. And now I'm going to check on the beans, and I think we'll be all ready to eat. Your sauce to like thicken up a little bit like that, and this would make a great side dish for your next barbecue, whenever that will be. I know we're in January, but we can dream about the summer already. So I hope you, if you're interested in making one of the recipes, you can enter and win an Instant Pot. We're going to be drawing in 2 weeks, and the Instant Pot is courtesy of our friends at Always Healthcare. And if you have any questions about any of the recipes, just drop me a comment in Facebook. And thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.